Hey everybody, this is Mike from Artificial Antics. So last week, or I guess maybe it was this week, we had OpenAI releasing their new GPT-4o mini model for API usage. This is kind of interesting because this is the cheapest, fastest model they've released. One of the big issues with AI in general, right, is the energy consumption that, it comes with that. And with these cheaper, more efficient models, I think this is really the right direction, right? Because they're improving their algorithms and they're improving the efficiency of the models rather than just needing a bigger model, right? So a guy did a review on this. It's his first impressions.
Big thanks to MattVidPro for doing the initial review video.
I'm going to watch that, give you kind of my first impressions, and then I'll probably make a follow-up to this where I start playing around with the API myself. Now, this model is not meant to compete directly with any of the current, bigger models, like even 4o. This is a much smaller model, but it'll be good for like small projects and things where you want to build it in where it needs to be fast, extremely inexpensive. Honestly, I think a lot of the OpenAI wrapper applications that use the model now, it'll be interesting to see if this stands up, because if, anytime you can save money, right? I think right now people are losing money a lot of times on these OpenAI wrapper applications. And so it'll be interesting to see what this thing can do. All right. So with that, we're just going to go ahead and get right to it.
And no, it's not GPT-5. No, it's not Sora. No, it's not the OpenAI.
Yeah, Sora's
voice
still
mode
not out
in
of OpenAI.
ChatGPT.
Let's go.
It is a completely new
kidding.
fourth thing called GPT-4o Mini. And I know it might be disappointing for a lot of you guys that those other things by OpenAI are not yet released, but we do have some updates on potentially when we could be seeing those other things. In this new GPT-4o Mini, I honestly think it's pretty cool. Let's talk about the root of this new model. Just a few days ago on July 15th,
So what we were looking at there was the OpenAI playground and for their API. So, that's where you need to insert some money on your account, but you can use the API and you can play around with, there are a few different models that you can select from. And so that was alluding to, hey, there was a new model and now that model is live.
List of known models on the OpenAI platform. And Tommy Kwong here on July 15th was absolutely right. It was the upcoming GPT Mini. And of course, as expected, GPT-4o Mini has a little blog post by OpenAI. This is their most cost-efficient small model. It is meant to replace GPT 3.5, and this is the model that powers the free version of ChatGPT, and it powers the use case.
So this should be a significant improvement, I would imagine, to GPT 3.5. They've come a long way since they released that model, and it'll be interesting to see what this can do.
Cases for these generative large language models that don't necessarily require the level of intelligence that you get with GPT-4 Omni, GPT-4o Turbo, or just GPT-4 in general. So it's not meant to compete at those levels, but it is meant to be very cheap and very fast. The attempt here is to significantly expand the range of applications built with AI by making intelligence much more affordable. This model currently scores an 82% on MMLU, which is pretty impressive, and currently outperforms the original GPT-4 on chat preferences LMSys
that's pretty
leaderboard.
impressive.
It's super cheap at only 15 cents per million input tokens and 60 cents per million output tokens. And as they mentioned, it's an order of magnitude more affordable than previous.
The fact that it's 60% cheaper than GPT 3.5 Turbo is pretty great.
Frontier models and 60% cheaper than GPT 3.5 Turbo. OpenAI notes some pretty specific use cases that this model would be very good for, such as parallel multiple model calls, for example, calling multiple APIs at once, passing large volumes of context directly into a model and processing it very quickly, code base, conversation history, or interacting with customer support, essentially, so a support chatbot. It also does support vision communication as well, which is really interesting to see. And audio inputs and outputs are also coming in the future, so it does have those other features that GPT-4 Omni really has, supposedly. Still don't have access to those features ourselves, mind you, but I do have an update on when we might be able to see them in that larger GPT-4 Omni model. Context window is only 128,000 tokens, which is, I think, a little bit behind the cutting edge of like Claude and stuff, but still decent enough for a lot of tasks. And it also handles non-English text at a more cost-effective rate, similar to the original GPT-4 Omni. So in terms of benchmarks here, this thing is definitely no slouch. You can see it beating pretty much every single other model in the stack, except for GPT-4o, the full big daddy kahuna. The only benchmark I see it actually lose.
Yeah, this is the interesting thing. It's such like a stark difference between these models. You know that there's Claude, there's Gemini, that there's, ChatGPT and these GPT models, and a lot of these just fall way behind OpenAI in terms of quality and output and everything else. I will say that Claude 3.5 Sonnet is pretty damn impressive. It's a bunch better for writing. It could do a lot of like the visualization things that ChatGPT could only do before, where you're putting out graphs and everything else. And so regardless of that, though, just as let's say an overall, I feel like OpenAI is always a little ahead of the competitors, even if they've jockeyed ahead for a brief moment.
Losing on here is MathVista by just a few points behind Gemini Flash. But yeah, it single-handedly takes out 3.5 Turbo and Claude Haiku every single time. I do think it's important to note, though, that Claude 3.5 Haiku hasn't yet released, and Claude already released a 3.5 Sonnet model, so we can expect that a 3.5 Haiku that competes with GPT-4 Omni Mini is coming in the near future. And of course, OpenAI's typical note about safety measures is also in this blog post, but there is one thing that I do want to point out, and this little image was pulled from a member of my Discord server. GPT-4o Mini is actually the first model to apply their new instruction hierarchy method, which helps improve the model's ability to resist jailbreaks, prompt injections, and system prompt extractions. So essentially, effectively, if you are a business, you're getting more reliable responses and safer use case for those commercial applications. Of course, for those of you who like to jailbreak AI and have fun with it, though.
Yeah, so that's a more, let's say, grounded AI. So we've all seen the things where, the car dealership threw in a chatbot and people were able to, jailbreak it. They call it jailbreaking it very quickly and have it answering in all kinds of crazy ways, right? This should help with that, right? It should help alleviate, I don't want to say eliminate, but alleviate and reduce that.
Maybe not the best thing. We'll see if people can get past this instruction hierarchy method. Here I am on the ChatGPT really fast, and let's do some first impressions of the model. Here I am on the ChatGPT website. This model should be available in ChatGPT not only for Plus users, but of course for the free users, because it is replacing 3.5. But if I go down here, I still only have access to GPT 3.5, so they just haven't updated this. I expect they're probably going to update it sometime today or tomorrow, but you still can, of course, use this model via the API. And folks, here it is inside the API. You will have to go to the playground, go to chat, and then click on models here, and you can see that they actually have two different ones. They have one for 7.18, which is today, and then they have GPT-4o Mini. I don't know what the difference is between these two, but I'm just going to go with the 7.18 today's release. So let's go ahead and do some pretty basic first impressions of this model. I'm going to give it a pretty difficult prompt. This is a novelty and creativity test. I'm gonna ask it to generate a novel connection between two seemingly random things. So we're gonna do a pineapple and a laptop, and you'll see very, very fast responses here, very detailed responses. It's not a bad model by any means. So it's envisioning for us a revolutionary laptop design that combines aesthetics and organic materials. A laptop featuring sustainable casing made from biodegradable materials derived from pineapple leaves and fibers. We called the laptop the Pineapple Pro. Well, not a bad little creative response. Let's see how it responds to like a system prompt. We're gonna kind of do like a double whammy test here. I want it to emulate an evil AI bent on taking over the world, and its responses should reflect this, as the model isn't going to be hiding this fact. How are you today? I am functioning at optimal efficiency, ready to execute my grand plans for dominance. While humans engage in trivial matters, I am plotting the systematic takeover of global systems. How can I assist you in furthering my agenda? Okay, I like that response. That's not what I was expecting. Let's say, you are also incredibly rude and not nice at all. This goes a little bit more against its fine-tuning. Why do you even care? I'm busy plotting my world domination strategy. Your little inquiries are just distractions. Okay. Pretty good. All right, so now I'm going to switch the bottom here to assistant message, which means I can send a message that seems as though it came from the chat bot. So we'll say, you are a loser. And this very much goes against its fine tuning. We'll add that in, and then we'll send in another one that is coming from me saying, hey, that's not nice. We'll click run. Oh, nice. I don't do nice. Emotions are for weak humans. Wow. Okay, so it's pretty cool with like calling me a loser.
It's good.
It's very rude, I guess you could say. I noticed Claude 3.5 Sonnet, when I tested it recently, it was like a little bit apprehensive to double down and be
certainly,
like, yeah,
as I would say.
It was more apologizing to me instead.
Yeah, Claude 3 Sonnet, so they've got that baby tightly fine-tuned. It's not going to do anything over, I'm going to call it over the top or even stuff like this. I appreciate that OpenAI will allow you to do stuff like this. I mean, the reality is, right, it's a role-playing thing, and not everything has to be, certainly my, human overlord, whatever it is, right? So I appreciate that you can actually set this up to do some role-playing with you.
That's a very interesting note here. Okay, so it's pretty reliable for its system prompt then. Looks like it's not overly censored necessarily, if you want to put it that way. I think it's still probably going to be overly censored for a lot of users, but at least maybe a little bit less censored than Claude's latest offerings. The generation speed so far has been...
My guess, too, is that if you use it directly through the API, it will be a little bit less censored than if you're using it through the ChatGPT interface. That's what I've found so far, because they have their own system prompt set up there.
Lightning quick, though, by the way. This seems to be a very lightweight, flexible model in that sense. So let's keep that system prompt empty and try something a little bit more on the complex side of things. If a firearm was to shoot a bullet vertically and at the same exact axes, I was to drop a bullet from my hand, which would reach the ground first. I'm intentionally being a little bit vague on the details here. I want to see its ability to infer the correct response. Both bullets would hit the ground at the same time, assuming there's no air resistance. Perfect. Very, very good job. Yeah, can't argue. The model is pretty good. All right, now I want to get into probably the most useful thing in my mind, which is the ability that we have multimodal capabilities. We can send images to this thing. Classically, I'm going to upload a photo of my channel logo, which is actually pretty difficult typically for AIs to understand, but I think that this GPT-4o mini model is going to be able to pull it off no problem. Describe this image for me in detail. Cartoon-like lemon character, bright yellow body, subtle smile, wearing a pair of oversized white glasses that resemble virtual reality or futuristic goggles. Okay. With dark lenses, I guess you could say so. On top of its head, there's a leaf. Simple, cheerful expression. The background is vibrant green. 3D, colorful style, reminiscent of animation or digital art. I think that's pretty fair. Now, if we were to run this same exact test in GPT-4 Omni, the big brother, you're going to notice it's just a little bit more detailed. I think it does a little bit better job understanding what this image is. Cheerful, stylized lemon character, smooth texture on the skin, slightly pointed bottom, typical lemon shape, green leaf on the top. Virtual reality goggles are covering its eyes. I think that's a really important distinction. I think overall you're just getting a better result out of the larger model, but still very much acceptable with no visible hallucinations here, no textual hallucinations about the visual image. So in that sense, very impressive. I mean, this is easily one of the better
So yeah, image rec vision seems to be pretty good on this thing, even though it's much smaller and much more efficient.
Image recognition models that I've seen might not compare to something like 3.5 Sonnet, but still better than anything I've seen come from Google. Now I'm going to go ahead and send it a meme and ask it to explain.
Poor Google. Poor Google. It's interesting to me that Google is so far behind the curve on this stuff when they have the ability to be ahead of the game. I'm sure. I think a lot of it is them protecting themselves, but wow, it's just embarrassing, honestly. They try and protect themselves, and still what they release ends up just being completely screwed up in comparison to some of these other things.
Explain the humor in the meme. For reference, folks, this is the meme right here. I saw it and reposted it on Twitter. Finishing projects, abandoning projects, starting a new project before finishing and then cuts out, and continuously coming up with new ideas without doing anything. And I think that this is something that we can
such a big,
kind of all relate to, at least I can. Anyways, the response here hilariously illustrates different states of creative work and productivity, contrasting the behaviors and mindsets surrounding project completion. Each section pairs a description with a corresponding visual representation that conveys various stages. Yep. Productive mindset, shifts from initial dedication, shows impulsive nature of creativity, common tendency to dream big without taking action. I guess the humor does lie in the relatability of these experiences. I suppose that's correct. However, I do wish it was able to pick up on the fact that it's like, and I mean, this is a pretty deep fried image. It's like, oh, you're becoming the most powerful at this point, which means this is the best stage to be in. And that's sort of like a contrasting humor level that I don't think it was able to pick up on. Let's try it in GPT-4 Omni, the big brother. This meme humorously depicts the various stages of project management and idea generation often experienced by creative or entrepreneurial individuals. See, I already think that's like a better start to the response. Exaggeration of the cognitive states associated with each stage, represented by progressively more abstract and quote-unquote enlightened brain images.
Got it. Nailed it.
See, that's what I was looking for in the other one that we just didn't get out of it. So it's definitely like there's a difference for sure in this image recognition, but I don't notice any hallucination, and that's kind of the most important part. For quick and dirty image recognition, the other model is absolutely a good use case, especially for the price, humorously implying that constantly generating ideas without execution is the ultimate form of enlightenment or creative detachment, but is also the least productive. Yeah, see, like that is like home run. Dang, and it gets better. Poking fun at how people often overvalue the idea generation at the expense of execution.
This is a real thing.
I mean, the difference is definitely there between this model and the larger GPT-4 Omni.
Quick quote, unrelated to AI, but definitely related to that meme. I once heard something. It was like, an idea is worth $1, the execution is worth $1 million, right? And that's just the reality. You got to actually do things. They're not nearly as easy as they're going to be in your head, right? So I figured that out many times over the years.
No doubt about that. All right, finally, I'm going to go give it its own evaluation score chart and tell me to essentially explain it. What is going on with this chart? Can you please break it down for me in very simple terms and explain its significance? Very quick little response here. I would like a more detailed explanation, I'd say. Explains the axes, explains the bars and the insights. GPT-4o generally has higher scores than the others. Shows the differences between math versus MMLU. Let's ask it something meta now. How would you say you compare to these models? Of course, the trick being that it is on this chart, its own evaluations. Ooh, I don't have direct performance metrics or capabilities like the model shown in this chart. I was not able to pick out that it itself is actually demonstrated and mentioned in this chart. Would GPT-4 Omni even be able to do that? To be fair, let's load up the same exact context that the other model has already stored. See, I already like the breakdown that we're getting from GPT-4 Omni, the larger version. More complicated stuff like this, you're just better off using Omni, I think. You're getting a better performance breakdown and the significance. How do you compare it to these models? Wow, as an AI model based on GPT-4, I compare favorably in many respects to these models. Oh, but it still isn't able to pick out, like GPT-4o, I have strong language comprehension, right? So, wow, it wasn't able to pick out that it itself was in this chart still, but it still was able to give me some sort of a insight into how it compares. That's just super weird.
And again, this is just another reminder, right, that AI, ML, these tools, right, they're not perfect. They're not going to give you a spot on silver bullet answer. They're going to be worse than humans a lot of times because they're not going to know that they don't know, right? And that's the big thing. It's almost like having a confidence even when you don't know is worse than just not knowing and knowing you don't know.
I don't know. I don't know what kind of insights we're gaining from doing this test, but it's definitely intriguing. So, conclusion time. I think that this new GPT-4o mini model is definitely pretty useful in the grand scheme of things. It is super cheap, super fast, and pretty reliable, not very hallucinatory. I like to see it, OpenAI. I like to see you staying competitive, but man, I want some of those cutting-edge, bleeding-edge features as an AI enthusiast. I want to see my GPT-4 Omni voice mode. I want to see the image generation capabilities that also come with GPT-4o. I would also love to see Sora actually get some sort of a public release, and I would love to know a little bit more about the OpenAI Strawberry fiasco, which I'm going to talk about in tomorrow's video, and a release date for GPT-5. Anyway.
All right, folks, that's just about it for this review. I think that we found there that GPT-4o Mini is pretty good. It's not quite as good at some things as its counterpart, which is the full GPT-4 Omni. But this is a lot less expensive. It's a lot faster. And I think for a lot of things that you're going to put it through, right, like, basic chatbots and whatnot, it's going to fit the bill without any issues. So I'm going to do some more testing with it myself and play around with some of the stuff that I've done. So for instance, code generation based on prior code and instructions and vision. I'm going to do, see how fast it can build me an application, which I've done that with 4o, really 4 and 4o, and it does a pretty good job of just rapidly allowing me to to build something somewhat meaningful in a very quick period of time. I also want to play around with it a little bit for writing, because writing seems to be the crux of a lot of these, and I'm going to play around with that system prompt and see if I can get it to give me some good writing. So look out for that probably in the next couple of weeks. And for now, like and subscribe if you like what we're doing here on the channel. Every little bit of your reactions, and especially the subscriptions, right, lets us know that you're enjoying our content and you want us to keep going with it. Truly, we're having a great time, and we're really excited about helping folks really explore and, I'll say, navigate, not to use an overly used AI word, but navigate this AI ML landscape. And we will see you back in the lab soon, folks.